Hi, uh, mm, I am Alex Gil. I am a senior lecturer and associate research faculty in the Department of Spanish and Portuguese at Yale University. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I look forward to our 5-minute conversation. My pre-recorded video is going to focus on a project that is related almost directly to the theme that brings us together. Over the past 10 years, worked on many mapping and network projects online. My specialty has been digital humanities combined with Caribbean studies throughout my career. This particular project I'm going to be talking about today, In the Same Boats, is a project that I worked on in collaboration with my dear colleague and friend Kayama Glover, and includes the collaborations of many scholars in Caribbean studies and in the general world of Africana studies. Now, I just want to make that clear at the outset that this is a team project. I cannot give everybody credit by name because this team has involved a lot of projects. I just wanted to mention that it's not just my project. So this project in particular, in this project, we set out to try to map the intersections and trajectories of Black historical figures in the 20th century. So these are literary figures or figures that played an important historical role in what we can call the Black Atlantic world in the 20th century. We've been working on this project for 4 or 5 years, and we are still working on it. At this particular point, we already have data sets for about 12 important Black historical figures, but we are expanding to eventually include hopefully around 30. So without further ado, let me jump into the project because it's easier to actually explain what it is by showing it to you. I'm going to share my screen here. The link on my screen right now is not public yet, so please don't share it. The project just recently went through what we call a forward migration, where we changed the technology behind the scenes and redid the design a little bit. And we still haven't put it in the main website link, which is the sameboats.org. I can open it here. So this is the old version of the project, and this is the new version of the project. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about the new version of the project. So please don't share the link. We should be hopefully by the time you're playing this pre-recorded video, we should probably be live on the main domain, but just in case. All right. So this project consists mostly of 2 main visualizations. So I'll talk a little bit about those, and then I'll talk a little bit about the behind-the-scenes data set that powers these visualizations, and give you a little bit of the intellectual background and motivation for doing this. The first visualization is the visualization that we call trajectories. So in our interface, you have on the left column 2 inputs. One is temporal, and the other one is the name of a figure, or names of figures, like more than one. So the idea here is that if we select any one of these features on the map output, we can see the trajectory of that person through a span of time around the world. Basically, where has this person been around the world in this span of time? So say, for example, I wanted to limit, right now it's set to 1850 to 2023, which is the default. But say I wanted to limit that to, I wanted to see where this figure has been from 1940 until 1960. So I would write 1940 January to 1959 January. And then you see the graph changes now, and it tells me, it just focuses on that area. If I were to click on any one of these circles, it tells me which trips to these places, when were trips to these places. Now I can compare that life trajectory. In this particular case, I'm going to compare it to Catherine Dunham, the dancer. So Semester is a poet and a statesman from France. I'm going to compare him to the important dancer, Catherine Dunham. And you can see now, as this small comparison allows us to see how Catherine, for example, had a wider range of travels than Césaire, but she also didn't spend that much time in any one place. You can tell from Césaire. Césaire, on the other hand, spent a lot of time in France and Martinique. You can also see that reflected in the size of the circle. The really useful visualization is the one intersections, based on pretty much the same data set, which just captures like when has a person been in this place or in this other place. And in intersections, what we have is the opportunity to see where, if people have been in the same space and time, in the same place at the same time. So for example, I want to pick the 1940s only. So I'm going to go from 1949 until, from 1940 January until 1949 December. And I'm going to select the Mrs. there, but I'm also going to select Du Bois, and I'm going to select Wilfredo Lang. And you can see here that in the map, we find some intersections, and you can click on the each of the circles of the cities that have been found, and it tells you the people that have been in this space from in this time range at this particular time. So in Cuba, for example, Wilfredo Lang and Du Bois may have coincided in 1941 and around June. So these two visualizations are the main products, right, or the highlights of this website. But we also have a search function that allows you to see look by location or by author. I'm going to look for Paris, and it tells me all the people that have that show up in Paris, and it has a little note that tells you, written by scholars about what they were doing in Paris in this particular time spans. Now, let's talk a little bit about the data. So in this case, each data set from one of these authors and the other dozen or so that we're working on constantly right now behind the scenes as we speak, was done by either one or two specialists of that person. So I'm a specialist of Césaire, and I worked on that data set. I worked on that data set in collaboration with another specialist of Césaire named Corberon Lerle, who is the main bibliographer. But each one of these figures was written by a scholar who has spent a reasonable amount of time on one of these figures. There's a very rigorous process of vetting for the data, double checking, making sure that it is not a, how do you say, a guess, but every single one of these data points has to have a source that is listed. So we don't show the source, although our data sets are open and you can verify, but we do keep track of them. So everything has to be cited back to the primary or secondary sources from which any given date and place comes from. So everything here is done with the rigor that we would expect from any kind of scholarly research. Now, the motivation for this project, and I remember I remember we started a conversation like around 6 or 7 years ago, was to more or less show how the world that artists and thinkers and historical figures inhabited in the Black Atlantic in the 20th century transcended language. And then sometimes we fall into the habit of only looking at certain group of thinkers and writers within the language tradition of the department that we belong to. So we belong to this in the Spanish and Portuguese department. You tend to look at certain figures and not others. And same for French, English, etc. The idea here is that actually the lived world of intellectual and artistic exchange between these artists does not reflect our sort of disciplinary divisions. And we wanted to sort of highlight them. And in highlighting that, also open up opportunities for us to collaborate with people outside of our different departments. So there is a cross-disciplinary impulse behind this. And add the digital element to this is not only cross-disciplinary in terms of our content, but also methodologically, we're trying to inspire each other to continue to think through and to produce artifacts that go beyond the book, the monograph, and the article. So these kinds of projects are great for us to think about the genres of our own scholarly production. This being an example of one project amongst many where we have tried to push those boundaries. Now, let me conclude with a couple of sort of tensions or sort of dichotomies that I like to think through when I talk about this project and other similar projects that I've worked on, and that might be useful for the question and answer session. Obviously, I am open to your questions and answers. I don't have to take my lead. We can actually address the questions that you may have about this project or about the things it evokes for you. But here's some of the things that I like to think through when I'm thinking about this project. One is, for example, the difference between a useful research interface that can help you advance your own research agenda versus an interface that produces new knowledge. So one of the things that I've noticed, for example, in a project like this one, is that it does both. It is both a research tool. So our joke is that this can be a dissertation generator. It's like, oh, I never noticed that C.L.R. James was in the same place as the Buddhists in 1934, something like that. This is a hypothetical example, not very fine. But I'm going to write about that, right? So this kind of usefulness, it's usually the type of product that we expect from librarians and archivists. So who does the labor matters a lot. On the other hand, scholars here are expected to produce new knowledge, which is something that this does. For example, me and Kayama have been able to use this project to make the argument that the Republic of Letters of the concept of the Republic of Letters or Casanova Pascal Casanova doesn't match really well the sort of centers of gravity of artistic production and intellectual life of the Black Atlantic world. And that is valuable amongst researchers and knowledge producers. People only expect you to make a claim, not necessarily to provide other use for other scholars. So that tension between we're providing something useful for other scholars versus this is something we're using to make our own claims and our own arguments as interventions in our own field. It's something that fascinates me, and I think about it a lot. The other tension that I wanted to talk about, which is this is something that I know addresses a curiosity that I found before in similar presentations, which is the tension between, like what some people say, I want to be able to do a map like this for my own, for 19th century Hispanic women writers, for example, random example. And it's the tension between off-the-shelf tools and artisanal software. the software that we make ourselves that answers the questions and does the things that we wanted to do specifically. So this project, for example, is unique. There isn't other software that did this before, but it's also not off the shelf in that you wouldn't be able to like log in and then you put in your data and then all of a sudden it works. Now, that artisanality is still there. If you wanted to use our project, you can. It's open source. We share the source and the data. But you would need a technologist to help you set it up the way you want to set it up. This is very different than something like, Story Maps or Google Maps, where you can just plug in your data and go. But they only provide you very templated, bespoke things, right? But not this type of project. And one of the things I like to think through this thing is because I like to encourage people to always think beyond the off-the-shelf tools, to imagine the sorts of interfaces that work for us in the humanities. This is, of course, an invitation to all of you to imagine interfaces that don't exist yet, that the business people are not interested in making. They won't sell to the public, but that they can help us continue to push the boundaries of our own thinking about our research objects. And we have that need, I believe, because these interfaces won't build themselves and nobody else will do them. So the more we imagine these types of things, the more we will fight for the resources that we have to invest in ourselves as producers of software and producers of technology that work for us and the humanities. So I'm going to stop there as I am reaching my time. And I look forward to all your questions. Thank you.